My husband's family tradition requires wives to hand over their paychecks. I refused, and his grandmother revealed a shocking secret. I, 34F, never thought I'd be posting here, but I'm still reeling from what happened last weekend and could use some perspective. My husband and I have been married for 3 years. Before we got married, everything seemed perfect. He was attentive, supportive of my career, and we agreed on most important life decisions. I'm a marketing executive at a tech company, while he works as an architect at his family's firm. Last month, I received a substantial promotion that came with a significant pay raise. I was beyond excited and couldn't wait to tell my husband. When I shared the news over dinner, his reaction wasn't what I expected. Instead of congratulating me, he cleared his throat and said, "Now that you're making more, we need to discuss the family tradition." I had no idea what he was talking about. He explained that in his family, all wives surrender their paychecks to their husbands, who then manage the household finances and provide the wives with a monthly allowance for personal expenses. He said his mother did this, his grandmothers did this, and all his aunts did this. It was a sign of trust and family unity. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. "This isn't the 1950s, I told him. "I'm not handing over my paycheck to anyone." He seemed genuinely shocked by my refusal. "But it's tradition," he kept saying, as if that explained everything. When I remained firm, he suggested we discuss it with his family over Sunday dinner that weekend. I agreed, thinking that perhaps his more reasonable family members would see how absurd this was. I was wrong. Sunday dinner at my in-laws' house is usually a pleasant affair, but that day, the atmosphere was tense from the moment we arrived. My mother-in-law greeted me with a cool hug, and I could tell my husband had already informed them of my rebellion. During dinner, my father-in-law asked about my promotion, which seemed like an innocent enough question until he followed it with, "So, have you two sorted out the financial arrangements yet?" "There's nothing to sort out," I said firmly. "I'll continue managing my own money as I always have." The table fell silent. My mother-in-law put down her fork and gave me a look that could freeze hell. "That's not how things work in this family," she said. What followed was a heated discussion where everyone except me seemed to think this tradition was perfectly reasonable. My sisters-in-law were suspiciously quiet, and I noticed they exchanged glances when I asked if they followed this tradition too. "Of course they do," my mother-in-law answered for them. "It's what keeps our family strong." I looked at my husband for support, but he was staring at his plate, avoiding eye contact. "I think it's about trust," his father added. "Don't you trust your husband to take care of you?" "This has nothing to do with trust," I responded. "It's about autonomy and respect. I earned my money, and I have every right to control it." My mother-in-law scoffed. "Modern women and their independence. Look where that's gotten society." I was about to respond when my husband's grandmother, who had been silently observing the conversation, suddenly spoke up. "Leave her alone," she said, her voice surprisingly strong for her 85 years. Everyone turned to look at her in shock. She was the matriarch of the family, and had always been the most traditional one. "Grandma, you of all people understand the importance of our traditions," my father-in-law said. She shook her head slowly. "Some traditions deserve to die." The room fell silent again, but this time it was different, tense, expectant. "Do you want to know why this tradition started?" she asked, making air quotes around the word tradition. It wasn't about trust or family unity. My mother-in-law tried to interrupt, but Grandma silenced her with a look. "My husband, your grandfather, gambled," she said, looking at my husband. "He lost nearly everything we had in the first year of our marriage. His father stepped in and took control of our finances to save us from ruin. That's when this tradition started, out of necessity, not virtue." She turned to me. "I never saw my paycheck. For 43 years, I worked as a nurse and never saw a penny of what I earned. I was given an allowance like a child." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My husband looked equally stunned. "But you always said," my mother-in-law began. "I said what I was told to say," Grandma interrupted. "I didn't want you girls to know how powerless I felt. But I'm too old now to keep up the charade, especially when I see history about to repeat itself." She reached across the table and took my hand. "Don't give up your financial independence, my dear. Not for tradition, not for family, not for anyone." The revelations didn't stop there. Once Grandma opened the floodgates, other truths came pouring out. My father-in-law had made several poor investments over the years, nearly bankrupting the family twice. My mother-in-law had been putting money aside in secret for years, afraid of what might happen if she didn't have a safety net. Even more shocking, my two sisters-in-law admitted they didn't actually follow the tradition. They had secret accounts their husbands knew nothing about. The tradition was a facade that everyone pretended to uphold. The dinner ended abruptly, with my father-in-law storming out and my mother-in-law in tears. My husband was silent during the drive home, processing everything he'd learned about his family. When we got home, I was prepared for an argument, but instead he apologized. "I had no idea," he said. I always thought it was just what our family did. I never questioned it. Would you have really wanted to control all our money? I asked him. He hesitated before answering, which told me everything I needed to know. I was raised to believe that's what a husband does, he finally said. But honestly, it sounds exhausting being responsible for everything. The next day, he suggested we see a financial advisor to set up a more equitable system for managing our household expenses while maintaining our individual accounts. It was a start, but the revelation at dinner had opened my eyes to something important. The man I married had been willing to continue a tradition he never questioned, one rooted in control and secrecy. He had been prepared to treat me as less than an equal partner. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Grandma's 4 decades of financial servitude, about the secrets and lies that had held this family together. I thought about how easily my husband had expected me to fall in line with a tradition that stripped me of my financial autonomy. 3 weeks have passed since that dinner. My husband and I have had many conversations about expectations, traditions, and partnership. He's been receptive and apologetic, acknowledging that he should have questioned this tradition long ago. But something has shifted between us. I see him differently now, not as the progressive, supportive man I thought I married, but as someone who was willing to perpetuate a controlling family dynamic without question. His family is still in turmoil. My father-in-law barely speaks to Grandma. My mother-in-law oscillates between defending the tradition and admitting its flaws. My sisters-in-law have become more open about their financial independence, causing tension with their husbands. Last night, my husband asked if we were okay, and I honestly didn't know how to answer. I love him, but I'm questioning everything about our relationship and his family. I'm wondering what other traditions might surface in the future, especially if we have children. Am I overreacting? Should I be more understanding of how he was raised? Or is this a red flag I should pay attention to? For now, I'm keeping my paycheck, my financial independence, and my eyes wide open. But I can't help wondering if the foundation of my marriage is as solid as I once believed it to be. **Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your insights and support. To address some common questions. 1. Yes, I'm going to stick around for now and see if counseling helps. We've scheduled our first appointment for next week. 2. No, there weren't other red flags before this. He's generally been supportive of my career and has never tried to control me in other ways. 3. For those asking about cultural background, we're both American, though his family has European roots. This isn't a cultural tradition from their homeland. It's something that apparently started with his grandparents and continued because no one questioned it. 4. Several people have suggested I check our financials carefully. I already have, and everything seems to be in order. We've always had separate accounts plus a joint account for household expenses, and I've been monitoring all of them. 5. To those asking about Grandma, yes, she's doing okay. My husband and I had dinner with her last night, away from the rest of the family. She shared more stories about her marriage and said that speaking out has been liberating. She's more concerned about the family rift than about any backlash against herself. I'll update if anything significant changes. For now, I'm proceeding with caution but trying to keep an open mind about whether our marriage can evolve past this. Update. 3 days later, we had our first counseling session yesterday. It was illuminating. The therapist helped us dig into my husband's assumptions about gender roles and marriage, and he admitted that there are other traditional expectations he's held onto without examining them. Nothing as extreme as the paycheck issue, but still concerning. We've agreed to continue therapy, both individually and as a couple. I'm cautiously optimistic, but still processing everything. As one commenter wisely said, the issue isn't just about money. It's about respect, partnership, and questioning harmful traditions rather than blindly following them. I want to especially thank the user who shared resources about financial abuse. While I don't think that's what was happening in my case, the information helped me articulate my concerns more clearly to both my husband and our therapist. Thank you again for all your support, advice, and for sharing your own experiences. It's helped me feel less alone in navigating this situation.